custom. Down. One is my and so Christ, oh, hi, hello, and welcome for a daily ASMR video. With another interesting topic. And for today, I just prepared something related to the past. We're gonna make a journey back in the Middle Ages to make a comparison between the life of poor and rich people, because that was the era when European society was deeply divided along its base class lines, with major differences between poor people and rich ones. And because we make a comparison, we're gonna analyze the social status of each caste, the daily life and opportunities of each. And I'm gonna start with the poor people first. Well, because I'm a little bit hungry, I thought I will boost a little bit the triggers in this video. I just bought some Pringles. Let's focus on Pringles with Texas barbecue sauce. I love Pringles, so from time to time I'm gonna eat one. And let's proceed. First, we're gonna start with the poor caste. Alright. And first, the poors were divided between serfs and peasants. In the feudal society, serfs were peasants that were bound to the land they worked on and unable to live without their lord permission. They were not slaves, but they just had a few rights. They worked for lords, and they were given small plots of farm for themselves, and they were protected during conflicts. On the other side, the free peasants were similar to serfs, but had more freedom and could leave the land. The free peasants often rented their plots and owed a portion for their crops or labor to the local lord. Let's discuss about the daily life of a poor peasant or serfs in the feudal society. Housing. Peasants lived in a small, simple home or shack, sometimes made of wood, mud, or stone, with thatched roofs. These houses usually had only one or maximum 2 rooms, and often the peasants shared their rooms with their animals during the winter for warmth. The diet of the poor people in the Middle Ages consisted mainly of Pringles. No, joking. Mainly of bread-based food or porridge, vegetable, and occasionally meat. Well, meat for those who could afford it, of course. One advantage is that the peasants grew their own food, or they relied on food from the communal stocks. Yes, back then there were communal stocks. Now, work. The life of a peasant revolved around hard labor, of course, often working long hours in agriculture and tending on animals. Their lives were subject of rhythmic taxations from the landlord. The clothing of the peasants. Well, the peasants wore very simple clothes. Practically, clothing made was something of wool, of linen, or linen, wool and linen, or one of both, usually in the earth tones. The footwear was minimal, often made by something from leather or woven. Well, the problem was the health, because they lived in a very low conditions, with poor hygiene, malnutrition, and lack of access to the medical treatments. The life expectancy of peasants in the Feudal Ages was quite low. About 40 or 45 years, the life expectancy. Compared to today's life expectancy, that in some countries can reach over 85 years. So it was more, almost half of the life expectancy from today. Well, the social and legal status. Peasants had little power. Most of the legal system in that time favored the wealthy and nobility. And beside that, the serfs were even limited in rights, and they were subjects of whims of their lord, who acted as protector and judge for the serfs. Well, even marriage, inheritance, and even personal movements were often controlled by the lord for who they worked. For the most part, social mobility was nearly impossible for the peasants, and almost none for the serfs. There was a way they could improve their status by becoming very skilled in their field, saving money in some cases, and buying their freedom. In rare instances, peasant revolts such as the peasants' revolt in England in 1381, highlighted the discontent and frustration of the lower class, but mostly the revolt were suppressed by the nobility. So, this was the first chapter of this topic, with the poor people, the peasants. Now, let's move to the other side, to the opposite side, to the rich people in the Middle Ages, and let's make a short analyze. Wow, I love these sprinkles. Well, nobility and the lords. Let's put them together in the same chapter. The nobility in that period of time, in the Middle Ages, held vast estates and were responsible for overseeing the peasants and the serfs who worked the land. In exchange for their work, the nobility provided protections and some food services. Knights and minor nobles served under an hierarchical greater lords or kings, often in exchange for their land. This is a practice called feudalism, and that's why that period of time was entitled Feudal era. Well, upon its necessary or was necessary, the lords and nobility were also expected to provide military services for their kings. Besides this, the landowners lived in manor or castles, which were larger and more fortified than homes of the peasantry. Castles were not only homes, but also a major symbol of power and control. No. Besides the nobility and the lords, the rich status was gained also by the clergy and the church. Members, the church was incredibly wealthy in that period of time and incredibly powerful, with high influence into the high ranks of the knights and to the king. And it was believed that the church was even richer than the king itself. High-ranking clergy, such as abbots, bishops, managed vast lands and wealth comparable to the nobility from that period of time. The next part, the next hierarchical status was represented by merchants and, in Europe, bourgeoisie. Well, these were the middle classes with the growth of towns and trade during the Middle Ages. A new class of merchants emerged. These were skilled artisans, traders, and business people who gained wealth with the help of commerce, rather than owning a land. Well, some merchants grew so wealthy that they rivaled the power of nobles in that period of time. Well, these were the castes. Now, let's analyze the daily life of a nobility one, or of a wealthy people. The wealthy individuals lived in large and mostly fortified homes or castles. Well, their homes were elaborately decorated with tapestries, arts, and furniture. The diet. The rich enjoyed a varied diet with cheese, spice, and different types of meats. Imported sometimes, with also pastries and wine. It was a trend back then that the wealthy people hosted grand feasts, especially events and celebration. Leisure. Nobles spent their time hunting, for example, feasting, participating in tournaments, and gathering in different kinds of high-class circles. They could also afford luxuries, and back then a book was considered a luxury, because some of them were before the printing press appeared, they were in a form of manuscripts. Well, not only the books were considered luxury items, but also fine clothing and jewelry. Well, the jewelry was a symbol of wealthiness back then, like it's also today. The clothing of the nobles were luxurious garments made of fine material like silk, velvet, and fur. The corals were brightly dyed with expensive materials that were a status symbols of their wealthiness. But the most important part is their influence, because social and legal status of noblemen, like merchants, landlords, landowners, and wealthy individuals, they held immense power and direct influence in the high class, something which in the rural cases of peasants and serfs was non-existent. The wealthy people had the ability to raise armies, levy taxes, and dispense justice on their side. Mostly the wealthiness of the noblemen came from labor of the peasants, most, or controlling vast portion of land. Well, they were often involved in politics and warfare, either direct or through alliances and marriages. The class of noblemen maintained their power by securing favorable marriages, for example, and gaining noble titles. The social mobility for the rich people was possible and generally revolved around increasing their own wealth. And they have done this mostly by marriages between noble families, where a key strategy for consolidating their power, influence, and wealth. Well, now we have pointed the two big social castes, the noblemen or the wealthy people, the rich people, and the poor ones, the peasants. But how about the interactions between the rich and the poor? In feudal system, the relationship between the rich and the poor was formalized through the system itself, where peasants worked the land for protection and food and to survive, while nobles provided security and governance for the peasants. This system kept the classes separated and reinforced for hundreds of years. Next are the taxes, because peasants were heavily taxed by their lords and required to pay tithes or small taxes to the church. This placed a significant burden on their already low incomes. Nobles, in contrast, were, I don't know, but I know that nobles were exempt from most taxes and lived off the wealth generated by the peasants' labor. So back then, in some kingdoms, only the peasants were those who paid taxes to the church, to the lords, and even a royalty tax to the king. I don't know, but I heard that. Let's take another Pringle. other side, the judge encouraged the wealthy to give alms to the poor and help the poor as part of their Christian duty. For example, monasteries and abbeys often provided some aid to the poor in the form of food and medical care. But this was very limited on those who need as an urgent matter. We can take, at the end, we can trace a conclusion. The stark divide between rich and the poor in the Middle Ages or feudal society was one of the defining features of that era. The lives of the poor were marked by hardship, heavy labor, and limited rights, while the rich people enjoyed the privilege of luxury, power, and influence. Although there were occasionally opportunities for social mobility, like a peasant to become a wealthy individual, these were very rare, and the majority of people lived their lives in the class they were born into. That's a sad fact. Well, these sprinkles are delicious. So, interesting facts, right? Well, I hope you enjoyed this video. And by the way, write down some comments below to express your opinion. And of course, if you are not subscribed to my channel now, it's the right moment to do it. It's the only support that I'm asking. Thank you very much for watching. And until next time, I wish you all the best.